Welcome in, Big Blue Nation, to another episode of the Cats Talk podcast. I'm your host, Cameron Johnston. And what do we have here? I don't know what's going on. We have Tyler Britton on the show. I guess he is just our resident football guest. He is back, and you can tell it's time for Kentucky football. Cats just wrapped up their spring practice a couple weeks ago, heading into the NFL draft tomorrow. Tyler, my man, it's good to see you. It feels like it's been a long time.
Yeah, Cam, it's been a hot second here. I know we were doing the basketball podcast for a little bit. I had to step away for a little bit, take care of some personal matters. But look, I'm back. It's Kentucky football season here. We got some spring ball going. We got the NFL draft tomorrow. Excited to be back and just talk about football.
Yeah, and we're good to have you back because, man, just going one-on-one with Jacob Boyers, it's a tough scene sometimes. I love the kid. Sometimes it's a little bit of a tough scene. You mentioned the NFL draft. Kentucky's got some prospects that we're expecting to be drafted. Let's just go ahead and dive into that a little bit. I mean, a tale of two seasons, really. Max Hairston was a projected, late first-round pick, early second-round pick, and he maintains that status. Deion Walker, top 10 consensus pick, and we'll be lucky to see him on day 2 of the draft. Let's give me some of your thoughts on some of those guys.
Yeah, it's kind of bittersweet to see them go. I know we gave Deion a lot of crap last year for not necessarily being the most productive. We kind of joked about him being the Albert Haynesworth of Kentucky last year. I think Kentucky had a lot of problems, but regardless, he's still a huge talent. That he's going to be leaving a huge void for us on the defensive line there. Maxwell Harrison, one of the best in the SEC. I know we missed some time last year, but it's going to be a huge gap to fill. Big shoes to fill. So. Excited for these guys, representing the NFL, but definitely some big holes that are going to have to be fixed up here.
Yeah, and I'm really excited for Max. Like you mentioned, battled injuries the entire year, had a great year prior, had an insane combine, ran the fastest in the NFL at a 4.28 40. Just seeing the smile on his face after he finished that, he knew he ran fast, knew he ran quick. That's the time that he wanted to run. And he's seen his draft stock really take off since then. I mean, he's projected to go anywhere from pick 19 to the Tampa Bay Bucks, anywhere into early second round. And he did finally get invited to the draft in Green Bay. So it's looking more and more likely that he's going to be that first round pick.
Yeah, excited for him. He's going to be very deserving of that first round pick. Hopefully we can see him on Sundays and he's making some big plays. There's usually one great corner every single year that comes in and just dominates the NFL. Let's hope he's one of those guys and not one of the busts. But let's talk about Deion Walker for a second. He came in last year and he was supposed to be a perennial top 10 pick going into the NFL draft this year. Seems like there's been some slippage here getting into the draft. Can you talk to us a little bit about what your thoughts are? What does that mean for the program? What does that mean for Deion moving forward?
Yeah, I really don't think it means too much for the program. Really, it just kind of shows what we already knew, that there was just a lax in the culture last year. Team was allowed to do whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted. Some guys were allowed to relax and, just ride on their abilities. Barry Brown's one of those guys who we'll talk about a little bit later as he left. But Deion, it's really just what could have been this year. We were talking about him in the offseason as he's got a chance to live up to, Josh Allen and be among those likes on the Kentucky defensive side of the ball. And just, he was injured, supposedly there was a back issue throughout the season, but he obviously didn't come into the season in great shape, didn't really work to tune his body up. And the NFL scouts, they put hours and hours into their craft. They're going to see stuff like that. They're going to see you getting high with your pad level, not being in shape. And, you and I mentioned it in the offseason. His upper body is massive, and his lower body is worse than mine. And I'm not known for having big legs myself. So, unfortunately, with Deion, it's just really just what could have been. Obviously, I still think he's probably going to go somewhere in the third round just because 6'6", 350, with that movement ability that he has. The NFL is a traits league, and I do think some team will take a flyer on Deion Walker in the third round.
Yeah, listen, first let's address your legs there for a second. You have chicken legs, all right, pal? If you would hit the Tom Britton workout every now and then and take some proteins, maybe some vitamins on the side, maybe you'll get up to Deion Walker's size. But well, that's a different subject for a different day, for a different podcast. But I agree with you. I think if once Deion gets into the NFL, I think that he'll have he will get into the NFL just based on pure talent size. We saw it last year, even the year before. He definitely had the highlights there. He can definitely do what he needs to do to be a good pro. I think if he gets into a program with some good leadership there, I think that the sky's the limit for this guy. That being said, I think the floor is also just as low. So excited to see what he can do. Again, hopefully we have two guys right now who are potentially going to be huge assets to the NFL. Might have really long careers, both of them. So looking forward to seeing that. But on that note, we have some other key departures. Some with every departure we have some additions too. Talk to me about some of the people, the new faces you see coming in, some of the other departures that you think might be impacting the team going into next season.
Yeah, before we move off the draft, just, like what you said with Deion Walker, I think you hit it on the head. I think this guy's potential is being a Pro Bowl type defensive tackle, being a Chris Jones type defensive tackle, a game wrecker, a guy who's going to be making $25+ million per season. If he has the work ethic, if he wants to do it. Deion has never been a guy who's lacked the God-given ability. If he takes advantage of it, I see him making a very long career and staying at a Pro Bowl level for quite some time. You also mentioned it just on the flip side. I mean, I could see it in where Deion's out of the league in 3 to 4 years as well. If you get the sophomore year at Kentucky, Deion Walker, this guy's going to be a perennial Pro Bowler. If you get the junior year, Deion Walker, where he's hurt, not working as hard as he should, I could see him being out of the league just as fast as well. But some of those other guys, I mean, we've got a lot of guys to fill, even guys who might not get drafted. Obviously, Jamin Dumas-Johnson probably get drafted on day 3, somewhere in the 5th, 6th, 7th round. And Eli Cox, with the NFL combine that he put up, had a really good relative athletic score. He might be able to sneak into the draft as well. So look for those 2 guys to hear their name called on Saturday of the draft. But even without those guys, I mean, we're talking, you're missing Zion Childress, Derek Jackson. Lots of guys that you relied on for a lot of snaps are just gone, whether that's talk about the transfer portal losses here in a second, graduation. Team's got a lot of shoes to fill, and we're going to talk about the additions, but it's got me a little nervous because when you rely on that many guys first coming into your program, the culture really can slip, and we saw what happened when the culture slips up like it did last year.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It's going to be some big shoes to fill. We were talking about, a little bit off the air. Barian Brown is, electric receiver, someone that we could think of filling the shoes of Dane Key, and really just being a really good asset to the offense, to the kick return game, the punt return game, so on and so forth. So, but I got some additions there on the receiving core there with Kendrick Law and Hardly Gilmore as well. Tell me your thoughts about those 2 guys.
Yeah, I mean, let's start with Hardly Gilmore. I mean, he left. Supposedly it was said that Kentucky allowed him to leave to go to Nebraska, follow the receivers coach with Dane Key up to Nebraska. He got dismissed from the program. I don't know. There's really been nothing to say why he was dismissed from the program. I think it's a really bad look to take him back. I think, we talked about him last season. I love the kid's talent. He's going to be an 18-year-old sophomore, played really well in games where he was given the opportunity. Obviously, we all know we couldn't block to get the ball downfield, but he did make some plays downfield when his number was called. You've got to keep Hardly Gilmore on a short leash. I'm talking like this guy's late for a practice, like dismissed from the team. I mean, it's one of those things. We're talking about trying to build this culture back, trying to get back to, the bring your lunch pail to work, show up with the hard hat on, ready to go. If he's not all in, bought into that culture, I think he's got to be one of the guys that you make an example of. But with that being said, I do love to have him back. I love the talent that he brings. And obviously, you mentioned it, we're going to be losing majority of our receiving core, Barian Brown, Anthony Brown-Stevens, and Dane Key. So we have big shoes to fill. But I do think we went out and did a good job of finding guys that fit roles like that. And I think we did a better job of finding guys that can play slot, can play outside, can work to intermediate games, whereas last year we really just had Dane Key and a bunch of gadget guys.
Yeah, kind of going back to the culture there, looking at last year with some of it almost seemed like it was the perfect recipe to be really successful, but sometimes when you have all that talent in one area, sometimes you just get too big of a head and it doesn't perform right. So, hopefully the culture can get reset this year under Mark Stoops and the coaching staff here. Like you said, we're bringing in a lot of new faces. I think of Kendrick Law here as a speedy, versatile athlete here coming in. put up okay stats last year. He was not necessarily like number one guy or anything like that, but I expect him to be a good gadget player on the side for us, and then some other guys on the offense as well. Tell me about some of the other highlight players that you think are going to be good assets here. We have a lot of holes on the offensive side, defensive side. I think of the offensive line that we struggled with last year. Tell me about some of those guys that might be coming on that might be able to fill some big shoes.
Yeah, I mean, just to talk about Kendrick Law, like you said, dude, I walked by him at the spring practice. This guy is rocked up, dude. This guy is massive. He's swole. I mean, if I could take the body type that he is and just put myself, the guy is everything you look at. He looks like he's an NFL receiver. And obviously, coming from Alabama, that's NFL pedigree. They churn guys in and out of that program like nobody else. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what he can do. And a lot of these guys, they're just older, and you expect them to come in, work hard every day. Troy Stellato, receiver from Clemson, big program, getting him from. J.J. Hester coming in from Oklahoma, big program. He's a pretty big dude. I mean, he's got him listed at 6'4", but he looks longer than that. He looks like he's going to be able to be your true outside weapon, maybe have a little bit of a catch range to help out Zach Calzada in what might be his 50th year of college football, at least it seems like. And then True Edwards, obviously he's not getting talked about as much from Louisiana Tech. We're still waiting to see if he's going to have any eligibility for this season or not, because as of right now, him and the NCAA are still kind of battling for that.
Yeah, I mean, look, we got, kind of going off of that, we also have a few new offensive linemen. We were talking last year, pretty much every podcast, about how bad the offensive line was, how it felt like every yard gained was, it was a battlefield. And quite literally, we both believe at this point that Brock Vandagriff retired from football just because of his offensive line. It was that abysmal last year. We had really, really low ratings. It was a tough scene. So look, we're resetting this year. We got 4 new guys coming in. Their names are really hard to pronounce, so bear with me here. We got Josh Braun, who's probably the easiest name. Correct me on that. But we got Shiza Pete. We got Evan Wilberly. And we got Alex Waschlager. Sounds like a good beer if you ask me later. But tell me about these guys. They're going to be filling in some holes on the offensive line. Hopefully we can get better production. But what are your expectations from this year? What did you see while you're at the spring training game, or practice, whatever they call it nowadays? And what should we expect from these guys for the 2025 season?
Yeah, just expect a lot of experience. A lot of these guys have played high caliber football. I mean, I first ran into Shai as Pete when he was on a visit at the Kentucky-Arkansas game. Don't really want to talk about that game because that didn't really go in our favor. Cal came in and gave us a loss. Thanks for bringing that up in a roundabout way again, Tom. Like I wanted to relive that game. But, I mean, he is 6'8" in all of it. He's got the long hair. He just looks like a tackle. He looks like he's ready to play in the SEC. Same thing with Alex Waschlager. Played at Bowling Green, left tackle at Bowling Green, and he was all conference out there as well. Josh Braun has been playing at Arkansas for the past couple of seasons. He's been great. You just look at him to come in, play right away, and start. Evan Wibberly is the one that's kind of a little bit of an outlier. He's projected to be your center right now. Him and Jagger Burton are kind of fighting for that center spot. Coming from Western Kentucky, where he was really good, but this is going to be quite the step up in competition for him. So I really do expect this offensive line I don't want to say this offensive line to be good or great, but I do expect this offensive line to be a lot better and a lot more improved, because these are Eric Wolford's guys. He got to handpick them this year. And really, this offensive line has to be good for this team to be good. I mean, we obviously mentioned that last year. We had a lot more talent, a lot more of those shiny, flashy pieces, and we couldn't get it done with that offensive line. I expect this offensive line to be a lot better than last year, but I will say it's probably going to take them a little bit of gelling time to get used to.
Sure. I mean, as expected. Look, I mean, last year we had the offensive line we had, and it seemed like our run game, there was games where we were absolutely productive. Look, what I'm expecting out of this year is I'm expecting a little bit of, our offensive line getting up here, ball snap. You put hands on the guy, and you push him back, and you drive him back, and you get him down the field. Let's have some good offensive line play. Let's get some protection on the field so our quarterbacks can throw the football. Let's get my Sonia dog in here because she's getting on the pod. Let's have a good, productive year. God damn, I'm tired of this offensive line costing us games. I'm tired of this costing us quarterbacks. We got another quarterback coming in. Keeping that in mind, talk to me a little bit about Zach Calzada here. What do you expect from him this season?
I mean, really, you just expect him to be your stop guy. I mean, you really just want him to – we were talking about a little bit off air. You expect him to be that bridge gap to let Cutter Boley develop for another year. We saw a lot of good flashes from Cutter last year. but I don't think he's ready to take over for this team yet. And Zach Calzada, hopefully, in the NFL you hear of the bridge guy, the bridge quarterback to get you to next year when you have maybe a better pick or the quarterback class is a little bit better. Zach, he's played a lot of SEC football already, Texas A&M and Auburn. Went to Incarnate Word as well right after the number 1 pick tomorrow, Cam Ward. So for Cutter to sit behind him, a guy who's played that much football, I think it's going to be good for him. Obviously, I don't think Cutter really got to learn much last year. He played behind Brock, who really didn't have much experience either. And when he was thrust into action, it was just, hey, here's the football. We can't pass block. Get it out and hope to God it works well. And it actually did there at Texas. He had a great game at Texas. Then, next time out comes back out, and he looks horrible against Louisville. So really, I'm just expecting Zach Calzada to be that perfect bridge guy. Maybe like a little bit like a Teddy Bridgewater type. Just get you through the season, not be the reason you're losing games, but also he's probably not going to be the reason you're winning them either.
Yeah, look, I'm in total agreement with you there. I think Cutter does need a good season to be able to sit back and actually watch good quarterback play. Not anything against Brock Vandagriff. I'm not going to give him – I'm not saying he played great by any means, but I'm not going to give him the fair shake there with the offensive line play we had last year. You had no time to throw the ball. I mean, even our screenplays were getting blown up, and you're not even supposed to have the ball for more than a second in your hand. So, let's get Cutter another year on the bench there with the clipboard. Hopefully, he can actually watch some play develop. And look, I mean, we saw it from Shedeur Sanders last year or the last couple of years. He didn't really have the best offensive line play, but when he did have the protection, he was able to learn from that experience to actually be able to throw the football out quick and efficiently to the guys outside. Helps to have Travis Hunter, but we got some dudes too on the outside.
That's where I was going to go.
Helps to have Travis Hunter, but let's not pretend like we don't have some athletes on the outside. So, and we'll be playing some competition out there where the guys outside that we do have should be able to get open easily. So, you kind of alluded to the spring training that you were at. Tell us a little bit about that. What did you see as an overall vibe and environment down there? What should we expect coming into the season, just based on what you saw?
Yeah, I mean, you keep saying spring training, so you keep making me think I'm talking baseball here. I just do want to shout out, how about the Kentucky Wildcats beat Louisville, run-ruled them yesterday, 17-5. Great win for the Batcats. They're starting to really turn it around. Beat Tennessee last weekend, took the series from them in Knoxville. Shout out to the Batcats. I know we don't cover them too much on this podcast, but that spring game, spring practice, it was a terrible environment. Everything about it, it was poorly ran, poorly managed. They gave you 2 weeks notice of when it was going to be. They were competing with a Keeneland Saturday. They made it at 10 a.m. Everything that could have gone wrong during that spring practice that didn't have to do with the guys that were on the field could have. From Mark Stoops, from whoever does event management for Kentucky football, whoever does marketing for Kentucky football. It was really just putrid. That's really the easiest way I can say it. And as a guy who would love to work for the university, I know saying this is probably not going to help with that. But it was terrible. Everything about it. I love Kentucky football. I love covering Kentucky football. And it was so bad that I wanted to leave early. And, if I'm saying that as somebody who drove down there 2 hours to go watch it, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, let's hope that the regular season doesn't go anything like that. Maybe they're just trying to, kind of keep it on the down low until the season starts. Obviously, everybody was thinking just getting off a high with the basketball season, getting back to good Kentucky basketball, more effective Kentucky basketball. Maybe we're trying to pump the brakes on football for a second after the record that all the hype that came in from last year for the football season just to end the way it did. Maybe they're trying to ease off a little bit, ease back into it, and then week one we'll just see a dominant win over Toledo. So
you see, I almost take the opposite approach with it. I think you gotta pump some life into this program. I mean, this fan base was at war last year. You had guys that were pro Mark Stoops staying, a lot of them that didn't want him to stay. I think they should have taken the exact opposite approach. Get that to where it's more family friendly. Invite kids out. Make it to where it's a big meet and greet. Like Tyler, as a guy who cheers for the Ohio State Buckeyes, you see how they do that spring game, how they advertise that. I got an advertisement down here in Northern Kentucky on a billboard for their spring game. I barely even knew that the Kentucky spring game was happening because it was a spring practice and I cover the team. So just to show the difference in what it's like. And we had a bunch of recruits on campus for that. And there might have been 1,000 people there. Maybe 1,000 people at Kroger Field. And I would guarantee you 85 to 90% were either working or there for friends and family. It was a really poor look. And I can't imagine that helping recruiting going down the going down the line.
Look, I totally agree with you. I will say from a front office standpoint, look, I worked for the Washington football team back in 2021, and it was probably one of the most difficult times to work there. And I worked in ticket sales, so I relied on the energy of the fan base to be able to, sell tickets to people to come out to games. And I can tell you it was really difficult coming off of some really bad years. Obviously, some other stuff going on inside the organization, but maybe that's the mindset that they have going on in the organization. I'm not saying you're wrong. You're absolutely right. I think there is some, obviously get the fans involved, get the kids involved, get the new stars you have bringing in involved. But it certainly is easier for Ohio State when they won a championship last year and, Kentucky.
Yeah, theirs is like that regardless.
Yeah, sure. I agree with that too. They have a long lasting tradition with that too. So I agree on both sides. I get both sides of it, but just want to throw that out there. But listen, you're still there. Let's stop talking about the front office for a second, because obviously they don't play football. Let's talk about the athletes on the field, the coaches on the field. What do you see from a performance standpoint from our new competition? You obviously talked about walking by some of these players, and they're big and massive, and that's a good feeling for a fan who's like, okay, cool, we need some big guys, some fast guys. But what did you see on the field? Did you see some cohesiveness? Did you see some good drills? And what did you see while you were there?
Yeah, I mean, cohesiveness as much as you can they've practiced all together for 2 weeks. I mean, I think everybody gelled well together. I mean, there wasn't any fights of any sort of like that. There wasn't too much feistiness on this, but again, it was a practice. There really isn't too much to take away. I'd love to come out of that spring practice and tell you, hey man, Kendrick Law is going to have a 1,200-yard season. But just the way they ran it and the way they executed it really isn't too many storylines to take away. I mean, Kendrick did, like I said, he looked rocked up. He looked huge. This offensive line does look a lot bigger just from left tackle to right tackle. They look a lot scarier getting off the bus. But, again, off the bus doesn't really win you football games. I thought Dante Dowdell, the running back from Nebraska, he's supposed to be more of our short yardage / goal line back. I thought he did show a little explosiveness in the spring practice. Granted, a lot of the people weren't playing in the spring practice. Like, we're going to mention Willie Rodriguez. You know my disdain for Willie Rodriguez and what that stains back to. He didn't practice. A lot of these guys really didn't suit up. So it's hard to give you a real good feeling when almost half the roster didn't participate.
That's fair. I mean, look, it's still very early on. I try not to take the spring practices, spring games with too much of a grain of, with too much, emphasis on the season. But, it is a good starting point to see where they're at. We're coming in with a lot of new guys, a lot of new faces. And we were talking about it a little bit earlier, alluding toward it earlier, and we were talking about it a little more off air. We have a lot of new guys. This is almost a reset for Mark Stoops and his coaching staff going into the season. It's going to be a culture change. Do you see, improvements going into the season now with all this NFL talent going, but a whole bunch of new faces coming in? What improvements do you see? What are your expectations for the year? What's your early thoughts going into the year here?
Yeah, I mean, as crazy it is to say, is I think this team will be a lot better. I think this offense will be a lot better. I think the defense will take a step back. I mean, obviously you're losing a first-round corner, all SEC defensive tackle, all SEC linebacker. So the defense is going to take a step back, and I fully expect that. But, I mean, I think if you remember us talking last year, that defense didn't perform like that all the time either. The game against Florida, they were really bad. The game against Louisville, they were horrible. I mean, nobody showed up in that game against Louisville. It's weird to say, but I think the team is actually going to be better, but better might result in a 5-7 record. And honestly, if I told you 5-7 now, like we'll go through a little bit of the schedule later, 5-7 might be you're stealing a couple games. I think best case scenario for this team, it's probably 6-6. And it really sucks because I hate saying best scenario is 6-6, but honestly, I think that's kind of what we're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, we'll jump into the schedule here in a second, but I'm kind of in the same boat there. Look, I'm saying I don't think it's not going to be hard to go better than 4-8, but it's going to be really hard to go 5-7 if that makes sense. I think that we'll have some new faces out there. I think that the energy will be brand new. I think Mark Stoops has something to prove for himself and to the fan base. Now, look, I mean, there's some changes on offense and defense. We're missing a kicker now. Alex Rayner's gone. I think that there's going to be, there's going to need to be some improvements on both sides of the ball, continuing from last year. If you could change one thing, or if you could improve off one thing from last year, what would that look like on offense and defense going into the season?
I just want to touch on the energy that you should be getting from the coaching staff. I mean, let's just call it how it is. Last year was a dumpster fire. You had off-field problems. You had on-field problems. You were supposed to be a team that was loaded with talent. We talked about all offseason how this fan base was so excited. All the guys that have been developed in the program, Deion Walker, Max Hairston, Varian Brown, Dane Key, all these guys that had come through the ranks, and now it's their junior and senior season, and you're ready to make a big jump. You get the 5-star quarterback from Georgia, and like you mentioned, you go 4-8, and that includes a win over a top 10 Ole Miss team on the road. That includes a 1-point loss to a Georgia team that you probably should have beaten. With all those things going wrong, you still found a way to be 4-8. And if Mark Stoops doesn't have a fire this year, something to prove, everybody wanted them gone. You wanted them gone. I would like them gone. There's other guys that, I think can fill the role right now and lead us into a better spot for the new college football that's changing with the NIL era. It happens every time. But I think there's so many guys that could do it better. And if he doesn't have that fire lit in him, I don't know what will. So just speaking on that, this coaching staff has a lot to say.
Sounds like you just had a Walschlager.
Might have just had too many Walschlagers.
Yeah.
But like you mentioned, I think something that this team can improve on, and something I really do expect them to improve on, is goal line situations and 4th down short yardages. How many times were we watching a game last year and we saw them 3rd and goal, 4th and goal from the 2, and they just can't punch it in because we didn't have the back to be able to do it, or we didn't have the offensive line to be able to get that push. I expect, especially with the addition of Dante Dowdell, Josh Braun, Wolfschlager, you mentioned, Shias Pete, another year of Jagger Burton getting better. Jalen Farmer was actually pretty good last year, and I expect him to start as well. I think that's a spot where they're going to be better. You mentioned we're going to be losing Alex Rayner. Hopefully we don't need him to be taking as many 16-yard field goals and 24-yard field goals and stuff like that. I think especially on the offense side of the ball, short yardage situations and goal to goal, I think this team will improve a lot.
You know what's crazy about that is last year it didn't make sense why we couldn't get those 4th and 1s, those goal line stances. Most of the time, take away the quarterback sacks, like we were averaging a good chunk of yardage every single time we ran the ball, even against the toughest competition. For some reason, we just couldn't get 1 yard, and it was insane to me what was happening with why we couldn't get that. So I agree with you. If we can get one yard there, that'll definitely help. You see teams in the NFL like the Eagles who are always successful on 4th and 1 goal line situations. I'm not saying we have to be that dominant, but if we could put a better effort, so that way it's more of a 50-50 shot instead of what feels like a Hail Mary 10% shot. I think that would go a long way, and one, keeping our kicker off the field and actually getting 6 instead of 3, but also just keeping our offense on the field a little longer, keeping our defense off the field. I think too many times last year where we were demoralized from a 4th and 1 where we couldn't get it, and then our defense gets put on the field, a short field behind us, or we just go 4 and out, and then we have to give the ball back, or a 3 and out, and we have to give the ball back. So too many times where our offense wasn't productive on the short distance situations, like you mentioned. What about the defense? What do you think needs to be improved from defense to make sure that we are successful going in 2025 here?
Yeah, one last thing just on the short yardage, just remember the amount of games in which that played a big factor.
I think of Vanderbilt.
The Tennessee game, the Vanderbilt game, the Georgia game. I mean, there were so many games where that was such a prevalent part of the game and just changed full momentum. Even the Auburn game as well. I mean, there's 4 games right there that there's 2 to 3 plays in the game that completely turned momentum and changed the perspective of the game. And, I mean, maybe if you just switch this offensive line with this year's, maybe that changes the whole entire season. I don't know. There's certain things like that happen consistently throughout the year that can change the course of an entire season.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah, and then speaking on the defense, I really don't know if this defense is going to improve. I mean, the only thing I would like to see from this defense is just be more technically sound. There were so many blown coverages last year in a secondary in which you had guys that had been here for a little while. Like you mentioned, Max obviously didn't play a lot, but you got guys returning, DJ Waller, JQ Hardaway. If I was going to pick, my guy that, I was going to stand on the table and, bang the gavel for, it's going to be JQ Hardaway. I think he's going to have a great year as our cornerback 1. I'm expecting a lot from him. And I just can't have so many, blown coverage on the back end. Felt like we were giving up lots of big plays, lots of chunk plays. And I expect that to really, kind of stop. We've had the same defense coordinator for a while. Just have to get it together in that aspect. That's the only way I'm looking to improve on the defense side of the ball because, like you mentioned, talent-wise, we're going to be losing a lot, specifically on defense.
Sure. Well, why don't we jump into the season schedule here? We're just talking about how we were going to be playing Toledo to start off the season. Got some good matchups. really around. But like you said, it's going to be a competitive matchup. It's going to be a competitive season. I feel good if we can go based off right now, and we'll make our guesses later. But based off right now, just pre-look at the schedule, we got Toledo, Ole Miss, Eastern Michigan, South Carolina for our first 4 games. How are you feeling for the start of the season with such a young team going into a season? Obviously, the first 3 games are home, by the way, the Toledo, Ole Miss, and Eastern Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you remember this. We were a lot worse at home last year than we were on the road outside of, the cupcake games that you should win. I would love to see this team finally start winning some SEC home games. That would be a nice change since we haven't done it for over 2 years. But, I was talking to you off air about it. Toledo's been a good football program for the past couple of years. They keep producing, NFL talent. Think of Quinyon Mitchell going in the first round of the Philadelphia Eagles. Darius Alexander, their defensive tackle, is going to hear his name called pretty early on Friday afternoon. I don't expect that to be an easy win. I do think they will win that game. Ohio U, who, we kind of beat the brakes off last year, was that we were able to, take care of them, and they took care of Toledo pretty handedly as well. So I would expect to win that game. Ole Miss, I don't think Ole Miss is going to come to Lexington and just allow us to win a game. I really don't, especially after last year. Our game last year kept them out of the playoffs. If they beat us and take care of business, they were in the playoffs. So I think Lane Kiffin's going to have a couple of tricks up his sleeve, and that game's probably going to get real ugly for us. So, in Eastern Michigan, I mean, you have to start off 2-1. If you don't start off 2-1, the season's already a failure, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm in agreement there. I think we should be able to beat Toledo and Eastern Michigan. I'm not going to say with ease, or at least not with Toledo, just for the exact reason you mentioned. Toledo's gritty, man. Toledo's one of those teams. They didn't win the MAC last year, but
it's like a town. Gritty little town.
It's something about my hometown, man. I don't know. I'm not even a Toledo fan. I was more of a Bowling Green fan back when I was in that area, but it's just something about the area. The people are different. There's something different in the water. Might be the algae up in the Great Lakes. I don't know, but but people are gritty, man. They play some games. They seem to get those random wins every single year. You're just like, you have no business winning that game, and you didn't win they didn't even win the MAC last year. They were even in the championship. It was Ohio versus Miami. Of course, my Bobcats won the championship, but I expect that to be a win for us regardless. It's a home game for Toledo or for Kentucky. Ole Miss, like you said, it's going to be a tough, gritty game as well. It was a gritty game last year. They have some new people, some new faces come in. We'll see, but don't be surprised if someone falls down with a cramp out of nowhere. And then you got Eastern Michigan. Oh, I've been to Eastern Michigan. Their facilities stink. Their team stinks. I've had some friends go to Eastern Michigan. Don't get me wrong. I really like those guys, but at the same time, they're not. They're like the Division 1B team. Like, they're not great. South Carolina is going to be the true test. The first road game of the season. There, we're going to be out South Carolina. It's going to be a tough game. What are your thoughts about that 4th game of the season here?
Yeah, I honestly think either that South Carolina or the Vanderbilt game are our only 2 chances of getting SEC wins. South Carolina's losing a lot of NFL talent. Nick Emanwori is going to be leaving. TJ Sanders and Kyle Kennard, all guys that played huge parts on their defense. They're going to be losing Raheem Rocket Sanders as well. They're losing a lot. Obviously, you're expecting Lenore Sellers to take another jump as this is going to be a second year starting. But I think that's one to where you're going to know if this program's starting to change and, take that step forward if they really compete down in Columbia and they find a way to win that game.
Yeah, I think that's a good take overall. I think, we're going to have some competitive games. I mean, we're looking at the next third of the schedule here, too. We got Georgia, Texas, Tennessee, and Auburn. Those games are going to be tough. They're all SEC teams. Georgia's always a tough team to play against. Texas is coming off a really hot year last year. You got a new quarterback in Arch Manning, who I thought was the better quarterback last year anyway. Tennessee has a new quarterback. They did a quarterback flop with UCLA. Although that was what's that?
Nico Amalito.
Yeah, pretty much. Although there's a flop there, I still see Tennessee being a good, true, solid SEC team there, and then Auburn to wrap it up. At least 2 of those are going to be home, Texas and Tennessee. Maybe we got a prayer in a couple of those, but it's going to be a long shot. It's going to be a gritty game for both of those. But what are your thoughts for the second third of the season here?
Yeah, I mean, for some reason, we always play Georgia tight and close, so I probably expect that game to be tight and close and, down to the wire. Obviously, I expect Georgia to win that game. Texas, I mean, dude, Texas is Texas. There's so many athletes, so many, who knows. By that time, that'll be Arch's, fifth or sixth game starting. He might be finding the groove with his receivers as well. I don't see a chance in which we win that game either. And to Tennessee, I mean, even without Nico, they always find a way to produce a good quarterback, or at least a quarterback that produces well in their system. Think about Hendon Hooker. You think about Josh Dobbs. I mean, even Joe Milton as well. I mean, they just consistently have guys that are at least good college quarterbacks and are able to run their offense how they please. So in that stretch, I see Kentucky going 0-3 as well. And unfortunately, even, Auburn and Florida beat the brakes off of us last year, and they're only getting better. DJ Lagway's returning. He's going to be a sophomore. Their running back that had, 5 touchdowns on us, set the freshman record for touchdowns in a game. He's going to be returning for a sophomore season as well. And same thing with Auburn. Auburn's only going to get better. I think that's 2 losses again.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough middle stretch of the season. This is where I think that you and I are going to be struggling on podcasts to find positivity with each other. But
I'm already struggling for positivity. It's still 5
it started
away.
with the spring practice for you. But at least by then, maybe we'll be talking about Kentucky basketball and starting to get hyped up for that. I don't know. But
it'll be around the corner, so yeah. I can get.
But I mean, following the Gators game, we will be playing at home for our last home game against Tennessee Tech. Let's go ahead and get a good dub on that one. I don't see that being too much of a problem. Again, not taking anything for granted, but hopefully it doesn't. But look, at the game I have 2 games circled, obviously on our calendar. One of them is the Louisville game to finish up the year this year on the road. But I think the one that I'm looking forward to most is actually the Vandy game because look, we played that game a little too close last year. Obviously, we lost late in the game. There's some we talked about it earlier. The close game, the 4th and 1s, the goal line stances. Like it's pretty much the same team. And I didn't think they were super great last year. I mean, they're going to have the same players coming in, which is going to be a benefit to them. But if we can get some good talent on the field, we can reset on our team. I think that could be a game that we can steal from the SEC. And get a dub this year. That way we don't get shut out from the SEC this year.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like I said, there's 3 games that are really circled on my calendar on the schedule for me. It's that South Carolina game, Vanderbilt game, and the Louisville game. Obviously, South Carolina's going to be tough. They still have Dylan Stewart. I mean, that kid was incredible last year. Vanderbilt, Diego Pavia, I think he might be 68 by the time he steps back. That first drop back of the season for Vanderbilt. The guy is older than Tom Britton, so, I mean, that's crazy that he's still playing college football. And then Louisville, I mean, they stomped you last year. The game wasn't even close. It was embarrassing on all fronts. I think you'll be able to tell if this program is taking a step forward or a step back solely based on those 3 games, South Carolina, Vanderbilt.
Not that there's any excuse for why we should have lost that game last year against Louisville, but, I mean, look, at the end of the year – all these players were already looking toward the draft. The season was over. It wasn't essentially over. It was over. Not to say like this is going to be the same case here. At this point of the season, if our pre-predictions are somewhat true and we go 0-for-5 for the Georgia through Gators game, we might be out of the playoff or out of the bowl contention altogether. But look, I think we can reset. I don't know if we have the guys right now who are necessarily pro potential at the very moment who are like first round pick worthy, second round pick worthy. So I think you have a lot of guys at the end of the year, regardless of what our record are, that are just going to be, ready to dominate. So, but let's go into Louisville this year and let's get a dub. That'd be a good way to end the season, and then we get ready for basketball.
I mean, that Louisville game has to matter. If that game doesn't matter to you or to those guys, like that's your biggest rival. That is the reason you schedule it at the end of the season every year. So it's something to look forward to. The fans, when you go to Papa John Stadium or whatever the hell it's called now, who knows? I don't know. I think he's being canceled, or at least he was canceled. I don't know. He said some bad things. We all know it. Papa John Stadium. But it gets hasty in that stadium. Fans are throwing stuff. I mean, just self-respect for yourself. Have a little respect for the name that you're playing on the front. You're getting paid by the name on the front now. There's no reason for you not to take this like a job. Take it seriously. And even if they do go, like you said, 0-for-5 in that stretch, or even 0-for-6 with a loss at South Carolina, that Louisville game, at the minimum, gives you at least a little building block to be like, hey, at least we found something to take down Louisville at the end of the year.
Absolutely. Cam, anything else you wanted to add in about Kentucky football that you think might be relevant for the fans to know, or any thoughts you had that you wanted to share?
I know everything that I just said for probably the last 35 minutes sounded negative, but this offense, I'm actually really looking forward to seeing how they gel. biggest problem is this: we're just in the SEC, man. Everybody has big, fast athletes, guys that they've been grooming to play for 2-3 years, and now are finally getting their chance. I think there's a good chance this Kentucky team is a lot better and a lot more of that Mark Stoops style football team that we came to know and love. You just got to be patient with them, especially this year. It's a tough schedule. I think if we do manage to go 5-7, 6-6, I know it sounds like loser's mentality, but take it as a win, and I think that's going to be a nice building block for this team going forward if they're able.
Yeah, look, I'm in total agreement with you. I think there's a lot more positives going into this year than last year. I think we were blinded last year with all the talent that was on the field, but it didn't foreshadow what the record was going to be, and it got really disappointing quick. I think this year's a little bit different. I think there's excitement for for different reasons. We got new talent on the field. We don't have necessarily the biggest names on the field, but we got people who have a lot of skill that can play some ball. So. Looking forward to seeing the improvements. Looking forward to see what we can do on the field. Who knows? Maybe by the time we're doing these predictions, we can see that there's a lot more potential on the field. Maybe we swing a couple wins against some of the bigger team names in the SEC, and hopefully we can steal ourselves a bowl game this year. I think that would be the ultimate goal. That might be the highest optimistic viewpoint for right now for Kentucky, but. I do see a little more optimism. This is the most optimistic I have felt since week 1 when you were bragging about how good this team was going to be for my first season covering Kentucky football. So
they should have. Yep. I say that's how good they should have been. The talent was there. The team was there. Just like you said, team slacking off. Guys like Barry and Brown, Deion Walker, you need to be pillars of your team, just didn't perform. But hopefully with the senior leadership that you're bringing in, guys like Zach Calzada, guys, that have played a lot of football, really keep the reins tight on these guys and show them what college football is about. And that, hey, listen, you can't just show up and win on Saturdays in the SEC. It's got to be worked for. And I think this team will work a lot harder than last year.
I definitely agree. Awesome. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in for yet another Cats Talk podcast. I'm your host, Tyler. This is your other host, Cameron Johnston. Make sure to follow us on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, everywhere you can think of. We have a platform there. We want to make sure we have you guys following us. Make sure you have your friends and family subscribe as well. Cameron does a lot of live updates or up-to-date updates on TikTok, so make sure to follow him to see his goofy face again. Make sure to comment on there, get his chicken legs back into the gym.
We're working on it. Hey, in all seriousness, good luck to all the Cats this weekend. NFL draft, it's life-changing stuff. Obviously, met Max a couple times. Real great guy, comes from a real great family. I'm really looking to see, how and where he goes. A lot of people have mocked him going to the Commanders up there, Tom. I might have to get another Commanders jersey if Max finds his way to the.
Hey, I'm just saying, as long as he can do a little bit better than Emmanuel Forbes, I think they'll welcome him with open arms. But if he turns out to be Emmanuel Forbes 2.0, they're not going to like him. He's going to get booed out of the stadium.
Well, you set the bar really low, and I think Max can over. But hey, that's all I got. Obviously, any news comes, we'll update you on it.